Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Make sure you go get yourself a Untitled Car Show official t-shirt from TrackMonkeyApparel.com. They are going to be printed. They are available until Friday this week, so if you are interested in getting one and supporting the show, that's the best way to do it. I would really appreciate it. Thanks everyone so much for all the support, all the kindness, and making this thing a reality. So make sure you go check out TrackMonkeyApparel.com and get yourself a t-shirt. You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit RightFootDown for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program. Thank you for joining us this evening. I have a husband and wife duo. The first on the show, it's Megan and Jim, because apparently we're friends, Hodgson. They are... it's just fun. They work over at a Crossthreaded, which is a YouTube series and a podcast. They've had some great guests on themselves, and then they have this wonderful little banter between themselves on episodes where you get to hear about wonderful ideas. Like, I think a few episodes ago, James, you were trying to basically invent tractor racing, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I mean, yeah, but it exists. I mean, if you put a motor and a seat and a wheel on something, and there are two of them, then somebody's going to race them.
This is true, and I was sitting there, and I had the little one in the car when that episode was on, and we're driving around, and it was like, I think he just, because you're trying to come up with a cheap method of doing wheel-to-wheel racing, like out in a field with low horsepower vehicles. I'm like, isn't that tractor racing? Isn't that exactly what tractor racing is?
Yeah, but the torque is so high on those. I mean, like with a proper tractor, you got to be careful not to do a wheel stand and throw the whole thing over on you.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe not tractor. What is it? The little like ride-on lawnmower racing. I think that's what I'm talking about. It might like.
I'm down with that too.
Yeah, all would be fun. Yeah, but you get great ideas like that, and then Megan, I can like feel as a fellow married individual. I can like feel the eye rolling through the audio, which is what is absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, a lot of people, they talk about, getting their significant other into, cars, automobiles. So, Megan, how did you get James into automobiles exactly?
That's a good question.
Oh, man. We just like doing stuff together. We like doing things with our hands, and when he moved in with me, I have a 2-car garage, and I only had 1 car, so he thought we needed more.
Yeah, now they're stacked up in the driveway,
right. And we have to back out and weave through the cars to get out of the driveway.
Yeah. There's a lot of projects. I'm trying to cut them down, but it's tough.
Well, isn't that how it works? Is every time you try and cut down on a project, like you list something for sale and then you end up with another project. That's just kind of the perpetual cycle.
Yeah, it never ends.
Yeah,
he kept saying that he wanted to do something like this, to do an excess ed. That he been wanting to do it for a really long time, and I just said, well, let's do it then. We have the time, we have the space, so the only thing that's lacking is money, but who needs that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one, you can always have these great experiences of building a car. You can always make more money. You can't get back the time wasted not having a roll cage car. So, like, why did you decide to go for those of you who are listening? Kind of the way I found out about it was like Jalopnik did an article on you a little while ago where you were building the ExoNet. I think I saw an article somewhere written about you all building this vehicle together, and it was I watched the videos, and I think it's like really cool to see you kind of working together on a vehicle like this, and like you also got a couple other projects going on with it. But I'm kind of very curious as to why, and I'm going to mispronounce this about 8 different ways, but an ExoNet. How do you pronounce it? ExoNet?
Exoset, yeah.
Exoset. See, that's not going to... My, like, weird Illinois, Chicago, like, thing doesn't let that kind of, like, roll. ExoNet. So as I... Exoset? Exo...
Yeah, you got it. That's it.
Yeah.
Exoset.
Yeah, that's not going to stick around for long. So why did you decide to build an Exoset? Yeah, see?
Well, the kit had some maturity on it, by which I mean it wasn't fresh out of the shed, so it had some developmental sort of revision. They're out of here in Atlanta, so we got to meet the people who run the company before we ever spent any money with them, and they got a great vibe, and that their company philosophy is reflected in the owners group, and the owners group is a really welcoming place. They're really cool folks, and as we were sort of looking at it, thinking about buying the car, we started talking to these folks, and they're showing us their cars, and we're meeting them and being friends with these people, and it's just like it's like a cool community. So there's all that going on, and then numbers wise, it's hard to beat the cost of the kit. I mean, it's way cheaper than any of the Factory 5. We were thinking about the 818. We looked at that, the 818R.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool kit, and people get those to be really, really fast. But I don't think the fit and finish on the kit is anywhere near where the Exoset is. That's just my opinion. Not having built an 818, I don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. And with a Miata, it's all Miata running gear. So, I mean, a brake rotor is $20. I mean, it's so, and plus you got all these people racing in spec Miata. So if we wanted to buy slicks, they're cheap because so many people race them. I mean, the platform is so well trodden that you're not going to run into any problem that somebody else hasn't figured out 50 ways to Sunday. I mean, it's there are a lot of reasons that it makes a really good. And I just like the slow car fast philosophy. Keep the weight down. You don't need 500 horsepower if the car weighs 1,500 pounds.
True. I guess it's a bit of having your cake and eating it too, because it's an exotic looking vehicle once it's all said and done. It's something no one else is going to have. It's cheap to run, cheap to maintain, and fun to drive around. And if you really wanted to, you could daily drive it. Not that it has a roof that you would want to do that, but the fuel mileage. I'm sure you take like 500 pounds off a Miata. How much weight are you saving over a stock Miata? Roughly,
it's getting up toward 800 pounds off the stock Miata.
Wow.
So stock NV Miata is neighborhood of 2,300 pounds, and the Exoset is neighborhood of 1,500 pounds.
So I mean, really, the mileage has got to be better too. So there's all sorts of benefits to it. Now you do kind of lose niceties like windshields and doors, but
yeah.
Who needs those anyway? So I'm curious, like, do you have a plan for the let me try this again, Exoset after you get it all done?
I think we agree that it'll never be done.
Yeah.
Well, my suggestion is going to be you got to take it to like a fancy restaurant and see if they let you like leave it parked out front.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
I like that one.
Yeah.
See, all my good ideas are for other people. That's how it works. That just crap ideas for myself.
Well, it's easy just to tell somebody else what they should do, right? Much easier than actually implementing change for yourself.
Well, yeah, there's no follow through on my half, so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we should try that, honey.
You need a little buck slip. So, let's kind of rewind here. So, obviously there was a passion for cars on both of your ends before you met and fell in love, I would imagine, or is this something that you kind of got each other into as you went along?
No, Jim's definitely more into cars in the traditional sense. I mean, I like cars, and I like driving fast, and I like working on stuff. I mean, I love the sound of a nicely tuned engine. Goodness, but Jim, I wouldn't have done this without Jim. I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, she grew up working on cars with her dad and stuff. I mean, her dad and I get along really well because he's sort of a hands-on, fix-it kind of guy. So we have a good relationship. And I mean, I think she sort of grew up doing stuff with her hands, working on stuff. And when sort of I came along, was like, hey, let's attack this big project. It was like, yeah, let's do it. And I'll also say, after we put Megan in a race car for the first time, and she, got to drive on a track. As I recall, her first words after getting out of the car, her first time ever wheel-to-wheel racing, was something along the lines of, I noticed if I went into the corners really hot, I could drift all four wheels at the same time.
Bravo.
I mean, how do you? What more can you ask for than that? I mean, that's a race car driver right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that needed to be in the vows, I think, like four-wheel drifting in the vows.
Yeah, missed opportunity.
Yeah, we totally missed that one too.
Yeah, we talked about getting married at Road Atlanta. That was in the talks when we were picking marriage locations, but
I imagine that would have been cheap. That's yeah, because
yeah, apparently they've done it a couple times, but it would feel weird to me to be like inviting my family and everybody to come and be with us on our special day, and then I don't want to talk to anybody because I'm trying to get as much track time in as I can. That seems rude.
Mm-hmm. Plus, what's the point of having an open bar if you're trying to get out on the track? That just seems counterproductive. So
yeah, they definitely are at odds with one another for sure.
Mm-hmm. So then, Jim, you got into racing at a young age yourself. You said, Megan, you had a dad who was a wrencher, kind of laid that baseline. So, Jim, did you have kind of the same thing? Were you kind of born into it, or was this something you grew up into?
No, my dad could not care less about cars at all. He well, I say that, but he kind of likes Volvos. He's got a soft spot for Volvos.
Smart man.
Yeah. Oh, I'm speaking of which, I noticed that the Untitled Car Show sticker appears to be a 740 wagon. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I had one of those. I had a Volvo, an 82, and I bought it for $300, drove it for a year, and sold it for $300.
Yeah, that's the story of Volvo ownership. Is once you get in, you can just perpetuate like the money you put in and get out of it. I don't know how that works. Yeah. So. But
no, like my dad, my grandfather he liked trucks, but he didn't really do anything with them. My dad doesn't. My mom never really cared about. I was always into Porsches when I was a kid, and I would say, my mom would come home from work at the end of the day, and she would say, I saw a Porsche today, and I would say, well, what was it? Like 911. What did you see? And she would say, well, it was white. So she was trying to connect with me on that level, but she just
didn't quite get it.
Yeah, anything else? So nobody really in my family was into cars at all. I had to get myself into it.
So I mean, do you think it was because I feel like everyone gets into it either from a mechanical or an aesthetic appreciation, and then because you don't really fall in love with driving until you're actually able to drive, and by that point, most of us have already kind of decided we like cars or not, you know.
Right.
So do you think it was like more of a mechanical or more of an aesthetic thing that got you into it?
At the risk of escaping your
See,
sort
it's
of,
got to be difficult. We're back to James. Okay, James, what is it then?
Yeah. I remember like I had some Ferrari model cars when I was a kid that I thought was awesome. I had like a 250 GTB or something like that.
Yeah.
I had a remote control Ferrari F40 that I was totally in love with. Lamborghini posters, Ferrari Testarossa posters. I was born in '74, so the '80s were kind of when I was really, really starting to get sort of into cars, and I just I don't really know where it came from other than cars are awesome,
I mean, I get it. We all know it. It's one of those things where you just kind of you're drawn to it and you can't. I've had a few of those people on the show too, where it's like I don't know why, but it's just it became part of who you are, and that's kind of like it just overtakes you. So,
well, to be honest with you, for me, it's about I just like going. I want to go.
Mm.
I like riding bikes. I mean, anything that we're going. I like going.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I really like about cars is like we're going somewhere.
Yeah. The great emancipator of the populace. Before cars, it took forever to get like coast to coast, and then now it can only take a couple days. It's freedom, like personified or mechanicalized or however. Yeah, I guess not personified because it's a car, and that's not how that works. But another word, someone else.
If you want to anthropomorphize, that's up to you.
Yeah, but the eyeballs go into headlights. That's how that works, not this windshield nonsense. So
right, exactly.
I got hard feelings about that. So, Megan, I'm curious because my wife is also a nurse, and she got into the profession. She started off as a ambulance driver back in the day, like with a volunteer fire department. Was there any of that in your past? Like, because that's why my wife likes going. Well, that's why my wife can drive fast, is because she used to drive the ambulance with the big old siren. Did you have any of that in your background before you got into that race car, or was like the first time you like drove in anger was in a Lemons car?
No, I had first time I drove in anger was probably my Honda Civic. There's a great hill going up to a train track in the town where I grew up, and I would jump it with my friends in my Honda Civic. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I used to do that. I had an '87 Bronco that I would jump.
So there's.
I'm not dead.
As far as Georgia goes, I think there's like a law there where you have to like jump something and like pretend to be the Duke boys, no matter like where you're from. Is that like written somewhere? And like, like you get that like letter at the DMV, like don't forget you're legally obligated to jump like a railroad track or like a ravine at least once every decade. Is that somewhere written?
Yeah, well, she's from South Carolina, not from Alabama, but yeah, I mean, for sure the Dukes of Hazzard figured highly. And I was so devastated when I remember being a kid and reading somewhere in a magazine or something that they had so many different, I guess that was a Charger or Challenger?
Charger, yeah.
But they had, like 12 different cars of the General Lee. And yeah. I felt so like betrayed that they would have multiple numbers of that car. Because, I mean, it makes perfect sense now. I mean, how else? You can't wreck it. You can't. Yeah. So,
but it's almost like finding Santa Claus isn't real. Like, what? It's more than one car?
Right.
Like, no. Yeah.
More than one car.
Santa's more than one person?
It's absurd. How dare they?
Yeah. Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, I remember the first time I found out about that, I was like, what? Like it's heartbreaking for some weird, strange reason. So,
yeah,
Yeah. So then, what was your first car for both of you? Like,
Want to go first?
yeah.
No. It was an '87 Bronco. It was hanging around where my dad worked, and I think it was kind of like it's too busted for anybody else to want to be seen in it. And my dad was like, "What if I give you guys a couple bucks for this thing and I give it to my kid?" And they're like, "Yeah." And that's how I ended up with it. And it had some bad overheating problems. The power steering pump whined like you wouldn't believe. But like I said, I was just going. I just loved going, and I was so excited to get that thing. And I loved it. And, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as far as first cars go, that's a pretty good one. You know, Bronco. You know, enough room in the back for maybe some high school shenanigans. But how did it? Because they all meet an unfortunate end. Every first car seems to, end up in a ravine or end up, broken or overheated on the side of the road. So I'm curious, how did it meet its unfortunate demise?
I sold it.
Oh, you just proved me wrong on everything today.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hate to bust the bubble, but there weren't any shenanigans either. I was utterly repulsive. But I sold it to a girl that I went to school with and her dad. And actually, you know what? As a part of that transaction, that was the first time I'd ever sold a car. And my dad made me. It wasn't like he was like, "Okay, if you're going to sell this thing, you're going to go and do it yourself. You're going to handle the sale." And it was like a dad and his daughter, and he brought her along, and he was like, he was showing her how to look at a used car when you're thinking about buying it. Like you need to look at. If you open the hood and there's oil splashing everywhere, then you probably got a problem, And like, they looked over the car, and I learned a lot. I still remember that day. Like, I learned. He was there to teach his daughter how to buy a used car, but I ended up learning something from him about it. It was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Sometimes you learn stuff on accident, and it kind of sticks with you because, it's something a little different when it's someone. Basically, I mean, I can't really imagine that position. So you're learning from the person who's basically trying to lowball you on the price of a vehicle that you're trying to sell to them. So I guess you would be paying attention regardless of what they were saying to them. But if it's stuff you need to learn, all the better. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was like, like I said, he was showing her, and he wasn't trying to be shrewd with me. He was being honest, and I do the same thing when I buy a used car now. It's like I'm not trying to get away with anything sneaky, but if I can feel that the wheel bearing's gone, then I think we agree that I can't pay you full dollar for a car that's going to need wheel bearings in the next 100 miles.
Yeah, those wheel bearings are overrated. Actually, no, I've never had them go out on a car yet, and so knock on wood on that one. So, Megan.
Well, I got a Subaru Forester I can sell you. I'll tell you what.
Is that the one you blew a head gasket in, or is that the a different Forester?
You acquired it.
Yeah, we got it cheap because it had already popped its head gaskets.
Mm-hmm.
Plural.
Yeah, because boxer engine, so fun.
Right.
So, yeah, I was very confused because I saw it on your channel where I saw, here's a Subaru Forester with a blown head gasket. I was like, how did that come to be? Like, how do you blow a head gasket in a Forester besides, the fact that it was made by Fuji Heavy Industries and boxer engine, so it's just going to blow a head gasket regardless. It wasn't anything silly. It was just kind of normal wear and tear.
I think really it's aggrandizement to call it a blown head gasket. It's just that, it's a boxer engine, so they sit there on their side, and over days and months and years, eventually it just starts to leak, and because they didn't have a very good steel, and I guess eventually just the heating and cooling, and the liquids sitting there in the cylinder eventually work their way out, and once there's a pathway, then you're losing compression and oil's leaking out and going everywhere and nasty.
Yeah. Well, I blew 2 head gaskets in one car in less than a couple months, so I feel your pain on replacing those. Those things are not fun to deal with at all. Yeah,
I'm not doing that again.
No.
It was terrible.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like such an easy thing. You just got to get in and replace one gasket. How hard could it be? And then it turns into a living nightmare. And then there's oil all over the garage, and you're crying, and your wife is just shaking her head at you like, "What did you do?" Like, or is that just me? Is that just you? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the first afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 weeks getting the thing back together.
Mm-hmm. Somehow getting it apart is always easier than getting it back together. Maybe that's my organizational system problem. But enough of my shortcomings. So, Megan, what was your first car that you got? You drove, I suppose.
It was a 85 Civic hatchback, manual transmission. And it met its demise when I lent it to my brother, and he drifted it off an embankment, rolled it upside down.
Oops.
And then he and his friends got out and flipped it back over and drove it away, but all of the oil had run out of the engine, so it really did blow a head gasket then.
Yeah.
So, is your brother still with us, or did he meet an unfortunate ending in an embankment? So.
No, I don't know how he has made it all these years, but he is still alive.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You haven't got him back for that then, I suppose. So, I mean, I really can't imagine, because that's your first car. How long did you have it before we put it in the ditch?
I got it when I was, my mom was a nurse too, and she worked the evening shift, so I got my driving license pretty early. I guess actually I got it right when I was 16. So I had the car for a couple of years before that. It was just waiting for me, I guess, in the driveway.
Mm.
And then I drove it until I was 20.
Mm. And then get put into an embankment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, like...
Side.
I mean, so you formed an emotional attachment with this car. It's your first taste of freedom, and then your brother puts it into a ditch. I mean, like, not to bring up old wounds, but, like...
I was really upset.
Yeah.
I was a college student, and that was my way to get to clinicals. I was in nursing school, and suddenly I had no car, and I still had to get to clinical. So I was in a little bit of I was really mad.
I suppose if he was borrowing your car, that meant he had no car in which
Correct.
to give you. Yeah, so...
Correct.
So then what was the scramble to get after that?
Oh, my God. I'm embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a green Dodge Neon. It was this horrible, horrible green neon thing.
Was it that...
It was so ugly, though.
Yeah.
But it was so ugly.
Was it that, like, weird pastel they put on neons for a bit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It looks like a driving Easter egg. I know which one you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a step up from the Civic at that point. It was, that's it, honey. Jim just found it on the internet. I think it's for sale. But it had air conditioning, and it had a radio, and my Civic had a boombox seat belted into the passenger seat for the radio. So that was a little bit nicer, I'll admit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, having a radio, I guess no one would, because Civics always get stuff stolen out of them. Radio's a big one. So that makes sense. I was expecting the Bronco to have the boombox stereo, not the Civic, but...
Yeah, it did. I had a boombox in there.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I've never. Now my Volvo for a while had no radio, but I just had, I was in a day and age where I could just put headphones in. I've never experienced a boombox, quote unquote head unit. So maybe I should try that out.
You're always running through your D-cell batteries. D's or C's.
Yeah.
And back in the day, they took like 18 D cell batteries.
Yeah, this one took 6. It was kind of small, but it I didn't have it strapped in very well one day and had to brake quickly, and it tumbled and lost a lot of its buttons.
Oh, poo-poo.
So
Tales of woe.
Yeah. So, do you think the living with some vehicles that had such wonderful equipment as boombox head units kind of endeared you to because you both take part in the 24 Hours of Lemons racing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of like gave you the appreciation of let's call them craptacular vehicles, or is this something you got into just because of it's really probably one of the cheapest ways to get into wheel-to-wheel racing?
I just think Lemons is awesome. I love those craptacular cars. I think that they're so creative, and everybody's there's no racing environment I've ever been in that is fun and so much camaraderie as a Lemons race. I mean, we'll wrench on your car, and then we'll go over and wrench on my car, and we're going to have a great time doing it.
Yeah.
So it's the community then that kind of drew you into it. So I'm curious, who came up with the idea first to go out Lemons racing?
Jim was on a team when I first met him, and then I joined the team the next year, or maybe I think the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then that team ended, and we joined another one closer to home. And now, we've been on that team for a few years now.
Excellent. So I haven't been to a Lemons race yet. It's on my list of, stuff to do.
Should be on the short list.
It is on the short list. I've met 2 apparently very renowned Lemons racers in the area, so I have no excuse now. I got to work with the team. But I'm curious, why didn't we see you in the Lemons Rally last year over here on the East Coast?
Well, because we can't take a week off. I mean, kids got to get to school, Megan's got to get to work. There's just no way. I mean, we would have. I would have considered it. I mean, I would have been into doing it, but it's just it would be a massive scheduling thing for us. And as much as we love motorsport and racing and stuff, at a certain point we have to ask ourselves, do we really want to have? I mean, we can't be checking kids out of school so that we can go race. That's just not going to work. Like they got to get an education. All that kind of stuff. So, that was the biggest thing.
I would argue that a kid can learn more broken down on the side of the road than they can in a classroom. Maybe something like that.
That might be true, but I don't know that the law sees it that way. You can't just be pulling your kids out of school. That's not going to work.
The pesky
We
law.
got married last year too, so we had a lot going on last year, and it wasn't even something that we talked about doing.
Well, hopefully you got to take part, because I took part in it last year. It's absolutely phenomenal. I need to get out and do a race. I know there's a couple coming up here. I got to talk to the 2 local teams I know now and try and figure out how to get myself in that as well. But it's kind of like the thing is like I can appreciate the scheduling thing because, again, my wife's a nurse and I know how hectic her schedule is, and then trying to shoehorn my busy-ass schedule into doing all this stuff, it does get kind of difficult. So, and I'm just really doing this and a little bit of YouTube stuff, and you got a YouTube series, and you got the podcast going on. So, like, is the excuse the podcast just so you'd have, like, an hour of uninterrupted from the kids' time together every week? Is that kind of how it got started?
No, we really like hanging out with them at the risk of sounding like boring old people. We really like hanging out with the kids, and we try to include them as much as they're willing to be included in car stuff.
Been in a few of our videos.
Yeah, it's just they're 13 and 10, so cars don't necessarily mean a lot to them just yet. we kind of been letting the YouTube slide. Just summertime has been so busy. We've been all over the place and, traveling, and kids have been going to camp and stuff like that. So, we haven't recorded a video in a while, but we're going to get back around to it.
Mm-hmm.
My plan for this summer was for us to do a video a week, and we kind of started that with the head gasket, the Forester head gasket situation, but it's just been too much work, and I haven't. It's between that and normal work and trying to do. We got our automotive podcast, and I also do a writer's podcast, and it's just too much stuff. So I'm kind of reorganizing at the moment.
Yeah, believe me, I feel that pain on all that. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this every week from now on, and then life gets in the way sometimes. So,
but really, we started the podcast because I don't know I didn't know of the Untitled Car Show at the time, so you'll excuse me for saying this, but I didn't know of a podcast that really, like an automotive podcast that had the sort of aesthetic that we have, which is, it bothers me when I hear people in the car industry say things like, well, this car only costs $45,000, so it's pretty inexpensive. I mean, that blows my mind. Like, for $45,000, I'm gonna have like 10 cars.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have a lot of track time, or I'm gonna buy something for 10 and do a lot of track days that year and a lot of racing. So we want to explore that sort of low buck type of thing, and also reach out to some people who are real racing drivers. Like Sarah Montgomery was a racing driver who agreed to be on the cast early in the show.
Yeah, the videos are fun, but they didn't provide any opportunity to have the guests or talk about automotive news the way we wanted to do, and so the podcast just seemed like it was something a little bit simpler than a video to put on,
mm-hmm.
and it's a little bit, it's easier to consume a podcast than it is a video of the same length, because you don't have to sit and watch a podcast.
Yeah. You can be driving to work or working on your own car.
Clean your house.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah,
not cleaning house.
Well, that's kind of what I find why I enjoy podcasting as well, is because it's the only thing where you can be enjoying the hobby of being an automotive enthusiast and actually consume media at the same time, whether you're working on the car or driving the car. And what I really like about yours, and this is the time of the podcast where I blow a bunch of smoke up your ass, but I really do mean it.
Please, our asses are ready.
Yeah. So now we're back to Jim, my good friend Jim and Megan here. No, it's you two have a wonderful dynamic together. It's really, I remember early on I was talking with some folks out in the ether about, like, in the podcasting business, about, like, should you do with, like, a co-host, and what do you talk about, and, like, how do you get a good dynamic. And years ago at this point I had a co-host, my good friend Proc, and we were doing everything well, but it was hard to get, schedules to line up, and, it's hard to get it's hard for both people to be kind of like chipper and ready to go at the same time. And really, when I listen to your podcast, I feel, you're both so happy to be on and be talking, and I enjoy it when you both get to do interviews. I like the dynamic you both have with each other. It's so, you can really feel the love. It's adorable, to be perfectly honest. And it's, it's what the community really needs too, because it is a different perspective. Like a lot of other podcasts, it's very male centric, and this is the smoking, not to get on Matt Fair too much, but this is the smoking tire, and we're going to sit around, we're going to talk cars while we drink beers, and like testosterone, and it's fun. Or like, Adam Carolla has his show, and it's very of a particular point of view. And with you two, you get what the majority of automotive enthusiasts really are, which is you're probably married, you're probably a man or a woman. There's some people in between, I suppose, but you're you're enjoying this as kind of a family bonding time, and you really get like, this is a podcast I can put on with my wife, and she gets it. I can put on with my daughter, and she gets it. Even though she's 2.5, she really doesn't get much of anything. But it's
Our other favorite podcast is peas, creamed peas.
But it's such a fun dynamic. It's so fun listening to you too, and you guys do a wonderful job interviewing people. I wish there was a little bit more interviews where it wasn't just Jim talking to some people. Maybe we need to get some Megan alone with some people too, or the two of you together some more. But I really do enjoy it, and I do think it's, as someone who consumes a bunch of podcasts, between what I do and as my hobby and kind of this as kind of a somewhat of a job thing, you do fill this niche that really is needed in the automotive community. And I really do I have to say, I enjoyed the podcast a little bit more than the YouTube stuff, but I really enjoy the YouTube stuff too. So, if someone's listening and you're like, how do I kind of slowly slide my, significant other into this automotive hobby? This would be a good way to find some good episodes and put them on and just kind of be like, oh, look, they do it together. Why don't we go out and try and build a cage Miata? Like, why not, sweetie? If they can do it, we can do it.
Video about how to do that.
Yeah, we addressed that directly in a video. Like, how do I get my significant other into working on cars?
Yeah,
that's one of our top questions we get.
People ask that all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the answer is chloroform and handcuffs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put the oil filter back on, and I'll let you go. Like, no.
Negativity and pressure. You want to do be as negative as possible. Add a lot of pressure to the situation.
Yeah.
Shouting.
Shouting.
Yeah.
Shouting is good.
You want to put on a lot of like very, very intense heavy metal music.
And if you could do it during the very most uncomfortable weather, better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good idea. Well done.
That's a lovely little taste of what the podcast you two put together is. It's charming. I don't know. Like it's definitely something you don't. I can't quite distill it and crystallize it. Like the word I'm exactly looking for, but it's charming. It's wholesome. It's no problem. It's wonderful. So I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think is this something? Because that's the other thing too. Is you're only. I just had the count in front of me and now I put it down because I don't mean this to be kind of like this. You're 27 episodes in and you have this wonderful like back and forth between the two of you, and obviously it helps that you're a married couple, but you seem very comfortable in front of the microphone. Like, for both of you, you kind of have already fallen into, how this whole thing works. Like, did you have experience doing anything like this beforehand, or is this something that has just come really naturally to both of you?
Well, this is like this is my fourth podcast, I think. I have a performance background, so I sort of understand recording and microphones, and I have a bunch of all that stuff. I was in my first play when I was in 6th grade. I had the lead role in the school play, and I mean, I was in theater, stand-up comedy. I was a musician for a number of years. Did that professionally. So I have a lot of performance in my background. And as for Megan, I just make her do it. It's not true.
I mean, but I have to tell myself, if you suck, everyone will think you suck. So you better do it good.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Being good on mic is all about just like relaxing and not really caring so much. Megan's really good at it.
Well, I do think, part of that is, the nursing background, because my wife has a lot of that too, of just like, unless people are dying around you, nothing's really that serious, Like, I don't know what your particular, like, speciality is. She's a critical care nurse, so maybe it's a little bit more of that into her than some of the other nursing professions. But it's like, as long as people aren't dead, it's a nice, relaxing day. You know? Yeah. So
airway's good. Nobody's bleeding out. We're okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You know, kind of lost it. Oh, this is why I wanted to go. So, completely changing the topic. Why Crocs?
You know, about Crocs, I'm really sorry for people that they're sort of bound by. You know what's ridiculous about Crocs is everybody wants to hate on Crocs, and they're like an easy target from some sort of style perspective. But let's talk about cargo shorts for a minute, okay? You don't need that many pockets, brother. You just don't. But anyway, to directly answer the question, I got into Crocs because they are the ultimate camp shoe. You can put a carabiner through the two straps and clip it onto your backpack, and they're very lightweight. They don't make any noise when they're banging together on the outside of your pack, so they're not annoying in that way. It doesn't matter if they get wet at all. You can walk down a trail with just your, you can get to camp at the end of the day and take off your boots and your socks and put your feet in your Crocs, and you got shoes on, but your feet are airing out, and they'll protect you from rocks and sticks and snakes and that kind of thing. So that's how I got into them, and they're just really comfortable. They cover your whole foot, but they're not tight, so they don't your feet get some air.
We don't like to wear shoes in the house from the garage. We have a lot of metal shaving stuff, and they're really easy to kick off right by the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really, why Crocs? I mean, like, it seems like I'm not one to really throw stones in this glass house of mine because I wear like Puma driving shoes that I absolutely destroy that have no foot protection. But I was sitting down, I was like, I can't think of a worse article of footwear like to have in the shop. And I know you got the one video where you make a steel toe single Croc, but in the video you talk about like you're constantly pulling metal out of your foot, or you're getting Megan to pull like pieces of metal out of your foot. It's like that only has to happen to me once before I kind of learned my lesson. Like you just kind of stubbornly kept with it. Like it's kind of pronounced by your weird inability to get into vehicles, right?
I try to have some style when I'm in my ingress procedure.
Mm-hmm. A while ago, we had a gentleman by the name of Will Clavey who has a segment called "Exiting Cars Like a Badass Motherfucker."
Oh my gosh.
Your entrance to cars is the exact polar opposite of that, and I will admit it tickles me pink every time. But then, like, you go in, I think you were getting into the Exonet or something. You basically went ass over tea kettle. But it's like, and then there's the socks, or there's the Crocs. Like, yeah, why are you wearing the Crocs? They're not even steel toe. Like, come on, man. I mean, where did the? Let's kind of tackle this. I'll get off the Crocs. I swear, I just just like it just like one of those things that just gets me, and maybe that's the whole point of it. Maybe you're like secretly trolling the rest of us, but like the ability to get into cars wrong does seem like a weird, messed up talent of yours. Kind of like, it's like a weird sort of like ballet that exists of like not being able to enter cars. Is this a talent you've grown over the years, or is this just like symptomatic of being a larger gentleman? You didn't think this question would be this deep. I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. I really like it when people on video, and a lot of this, I really like about Top Gear that they would have something crazy and expensive going on in the background, but they wouldn't really draw attention to it. And it would be like, so like Hammond is speaking in the foreground, and they're at a shopping center, and in the background a monster truck is driving over a car, but they're not, an American TV show would be like, in the next 10 minutes, this monster truck is going to drive over this car in this shopping center. And then they would say that to you like 50 times, and then there would be 2 minutes of action, commercial break. If you missed what was happening before the commercial, it's like, for some reason, American TV feels the need to just tell you things over and over and over again. And I get why that is, because your attention is broken up by the commercial breaks. And so they feel like they have to re-educate you every act break. And that bothers me. So I really like seeing stuff that is weird and it never gets explained. Like, nobody ever says, he's about to get into the car. I hope he doesn't do something weird. Just do the weird thing. Don't comment on it. Let it be what it is. If people understand it and they think it's amusing, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. So I don't know. I just
So the short answer is just let weird be weird, I guess.
Yeah, I like those moments. I feel like too much of content is concerned that you won't understand every moment of it. It is totally okay if you don't understand everything you see. In fact, I think those moments of cognitive dissonance are good for us as humans. It's not necessary for us to understand everything that we see. If we understand everything we're seeing, then we're not learning anything. And I'm not saying I'm teaching people stuff by beating a goofball around cars, but I just enjoy those moments of being a little bit transmundane.
Some big ass words for getting into car like a goofball. Transmundane, like cognitive dissonance. That's a good one. That one's a good one.
Yeah.
So, I really now want you to get a Bugatti Chiron or something to review and just get into it like a complete asshat. That would just be tickle me pink. Ooh, I wonder if you could get in through the hatchback. That would be hilarious.
It would be my goal to do if Bugatti ever gave me a Chiron, which there's no way that they would, it would be my goal to annoy the shit out of them and make them kind of make them sorry that they let me do it, because I just watched Harris's review, Chris Harris driving the Chiron, and I mean, I understand it's an ultra mega super halo car, so why wouldn't you speak of it with reverence? But that just fills me with the need to do something silly with it.
Mm-hmm. So
were they ever to give me one, which they won't.
Yeah. I mean, I do think.
Yeah.
I do think there's a similarity we all have here, where we have this appreciation for the cheap cars. So you said you got a bunch of projects sitting out there in the driveway right now. So what is in your current stable or your current fleet of vehicles?
Well, we got the Exocet, of course. Megan's daily driver requires some attention from time to time. It's a 2010 Mazda 3, right? Mm-hmm. 2010?
Yep.
The old Forester. We got the head gaskets back in that sucker. Wheel bearings and some other suspension stuff. I'm planning on selling that thing. And the 95 Chevy Suburban tow pig, which I think I'm going to sell it too, and then put the proceeds from that sale and the sale of the Forester into a newer tow pig /DD, because I would like to get it down to only 3 cars. I think we're going to start a new sort of restoration project soon with a family car, and we'll need the space. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have 5 cars sitting around at this house. That's too many.
What madness is this? Too many cars. What?
Well, it is great that we have a 2-car garage, and it is unbelievable, especially if you're going to own an open top, car. You kind of got to have a garage, but also I don't want Megan to have to park out in the rain. I mean, we do own a home. I mean, the garage is there for a reason,
I just dropped my microphone somehow. That was fun. The little hinge just decided to suddenly pop loose on me, so that's a weird one.
Typical.
Yeah, see, the entire car show could basically be summarized as technical issues also some cars.
Yeah. They plague us all.
Yeah, it's I mean, it makes sense. So I'm very much in the same boat. I got 3 cars, and there's 2 people who can drive them. So, and only 2 of those cars work, so it all works out. You just you have to have a little bit of space, and like. But the thing is, like, I think there's more of an appreciation of. I don't know. Are you the kind of folks who, like, you'd rather go out and buy a $500 car and have fun with it for like a few months, as opposed to going out and buying a $50,000 car and never touching it because it's too expensive to really, put through its paces? Slightly leading question, Ike, but I think it's a good one. So,
yeah, I don't anticipate we'll ever spend $50,000 on a car.
Yeah. What I'm getting at is, like, you'd rather, a car with a little miles and a little dings has character, whereas opposed to like a Chiron or like a GTR or something like that, you would never feel really comfortable driving it around, even if it was a press car, I suppose. I
really like putting the pedal all the way down, and I could never do that in a Chiron. So,
this is true.
You probably could once.
Maybe once.
And then you'd have to buy some like $4,500 tires.
Yeah.
In the 16-inch wide tires or whatever they are.
New shorts.
Yeah. And a clean pair of shorts.
I'm pretty sure Bugatti wouldn't make you wear a diaper in that car. They won't even let you. They won't even let you touch it. I was at the New York Auto Show, and like they have like the little special like cordon off section, even in the pressed one. Like all the other cars, you can get in and get out. And like that one, they're even like, you have to be like special to get back here, and only a certain amount of people at a time. And don't touch the cars. Each year, I touch the cars. I make it a point just kind of go like poke, like that's right, I did that. Yeah, so they'd probably fingerprint and be like, we have Ike's fingerprints on file. So, but kind of you're going to frame me for some sort of weird robbery. And that's why they told us not to touch it. But kind of like talking about the super expensive cars, I'm very curious about what you two would do. Let's say Warren Buffett decides one day, he's listening to your podcast, and he goes, I really want to fund these 2 individuals, and I want to give them a budget to do a story or an episode or a video, and for them to just do whatever they want with it, basically with an unlimited budget. Is there something that you are like dying to do or really want to do, and if money was no object, you would get out there and do it, video or car related wise?
Giving me the raised eyebrows. He's getting ready to say he wants a Porsche.
I don't know. Well, it depends on the parameters. But if I were given, if somebody had a bunch of money, and I would say, okay, we need a camera crew. We need a dozen or so drivers, and we need each one of those people needs to buy a between $1,500 and $2,500 Miata, and then they need to fit it with the Paco Motorsports suspension kit, so that they get a 3-inch lift on 30-inch tires on a Miata. And then we're going to do the Transamerica Trail. That would be an unbelievable movie. You know about the Transamerica Trail?
Yeah, it goes from, I'm trying to remember the starting point. It goes from Alaska, I want to say Anchorage up there, and it goes all the way down until like the southern tip of South America. I'm trying to think. Yeah, and there's
you're thinking of the one that goes to Tierra del Fuego. That's like the Can-Am whatever. But the Transamerica Trail is all dirt roads from Tennessee to California.
Oh, no, I was unaware of this.
Yeah, it's a dual sport motorcycle guy thing. Like that's where it got popularized anyway. That's how I found out about it. And you can these are all, I guess they're like public roads, but they're fire roads or whatever, what you would call double track. But you can get this series of maps from this one dude, and you start in Tennessee and you go out to California on all dirt roads. It would be amazing to do a like 2 or 3 week trip with everybody in lifted Miatas with 30-inch motors on them. That would be hilarious. It would be really funny. You know what? We would have to go by Harbor Freight and get some super cheap winches too, just because we're probably going to get stuck at some point or another.
I like the idea that you have an unlimited budget, but you're like, you know what? Harbor Freight winches. Those are the highest quality winches.
Yeah, you make a point, I guess. But I don't want to waste money. I mean, and I think that Mr. Buffett would appreciate that. I mean, he's not a money wasting kind of guy. He lives in the same house in Omaha he's lived in his entire life.
This is true.
Spending $30,000 on a Warren winch when I can get one for $450 from Harbor Freight. Right? I'm thinking of my investor here, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to appeal to my guy.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I'd never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So, Megan, anything different? Anything else you would like to do with that money besides driving across a dirt road and soft top convertible? I mean, to kind of distill it down to its basic point. I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds really fun.
Yeah, roll bars. Now that you mention it, I think we need roll
bars.
bars.
Roll bars would be good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think you need a Volvo wagon chase vehicle. That's where I'm at with that. Anytime you get through a Volvo wagon. Hmm? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
No,
Yeah.
I would probably just add that we would need a nice bottle of wine at the end of every day.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need somebody helicoptered in.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have the money, helicopter buffet. Ooh, you could like even go to the nearest big town. That would be fun. That'd be a very expensive trip.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm thinking put a sommelier and a chef and a sommelier in the helicopter, and they have a meal and a pairing for you each evening.
Mm-hmm. I'm picturing Gordon Ramsay in a like big old Black Hawk helicopter with a kitchen in it trailing y'all. I think that'd be interesting. And that in of itself could be an interesting video, just Gordon Ramsay in a helicopter. Like, I would watch. That would be the part that airs on like American TV, and it would be like coming up next on Gordon Ramsay in a helicopter, and like 8 jump cunts.
Yeah.
Like,
he's a car guy too. He might be into it.
I gotta add him to the guest list idea then. And let me see here. Let me see. Can I get rejected by Gordon Ramsay? I just want a big old F no. I feel like rejection from Gordon Ramsay is as good as acceptance from Gordon Ramsay. So, this being the podcast of record of automotive stuff, we have a list of, I call them the Inside the Actor Studio questions.
Okay.
These are questions that are, because Freddie Hernandez, Travare basically brought this up, but so we clarify this. As car enthusiasts, our answers for any of these questions could change at any point in the next second, minute, month, or year. So these are just as we sit at the moment. So seeing as how the proper parlance is to go ladies first, we're going to make Jim go first so that way Megan has some more time to think. So this is how this thing works. So it'll be fairly simple. We'll get into this fairly. You'll figure it out fairly quickly. So what is your favorite car? Did we lose you, Jim?
Oh, he's really thinking hard.
No, I'm thinking. It's I feel bad answering this way because I've never owned one, so I don't really know.
Can I take a guess here on 911? Yeah, okay. Any particular type? A Carrera, GT, GT3 RS?
Obviously the newer, the 991, the GT3 RS, obviously. But really, honestly, if money's no object, I can have anything. I'll take the RS America from when I was a kid. I just thought that was so cool. Like, they'll sell you a car that's got most of the stuff taken out of it. I know that it's dumb because they want more money for the car that's got less stuff in it, but I just dig it.
No, I
I
get
guess
that.
that was the 993 era RS America.
See, I will never understand German chassis codes for the life of me. German chassis codes and not Toyota, but Japanese engine codes are like my kryptonite when it comes to car stuff. Like, if you ever want to see my eyes go cross at like a car meet, like, just see me over at like the German section, be like, oh, this is a E43 BMW. That means it's got the engine in it, and I actually swapped in a like 2JZ motor, and my brain would just fucking explode. Like, that's how that works. like, oh my god, like, I like cars, dude, but you need to like calm yourself. Like just tell me the year and the make and the model, and I'll figure it out from there. Maybe a liter. Like, this is 2.2
Well, that would be
liter.
an interesting swap because the BMWs are historically the i6 motors, and the 2J is a 6 inline 6, so could be an interesting. I'm sure somebody's done that.
I'm sure they have too, and they probably try to explain it to me, and my eyes probably just went like.
Yeah. I bet there are a bunch of E30s out there with 2Js in them.
I don't even know what that means. Is that like a sedan? Who makes that? Who makes an E30? Like, what is that? Is that a Mercedes? I don't know what's going.
E30 is the sort of currently the quintessential car guy BMW because front engine, rear drive, relatively lightweight. You can get a 2-door model, and it's the 3 Series. Some people say they're underpowered, but in their day they weren't, but now they are kind of.
But see, this is what I'm talking about. I need it's a 3 Series from like 2002 to 2006, and I'll go, oh, okay, I know what that is. Like,
I think that would be an E36.
Okay.
I'm not a BMW guy. I don't know. Might not be right.
But
yeah, Porsche 993 era Porsche RS America.
So, Megan, what is your favorite car?
I would really like to have a Subaru WRX.
Not an STI, just a normal Subaru WRX?
STI, yeah, STI.
Gotta go STI.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, obviously. So,
yeah. If you don't get STI, they won't let you do you don't get the free vape pen. And you're not allowed to attend the grid life.
Hate on it, honey.
So, random thing happened to me earlier. I was going through a drive-thru. I own a Ford Fiesta ST. I go up to the drive-thru, and the person at the drive-thru asks me a question about the car. I see him head hanging out the window, and he's like, oh, how much did you get this for? And, I'm like, well, how much do these things go for? And I sit there and I, talking to him about it for a bit, and he goes, I'm thinking about getting a STI. And I go, oh, okay. And I tell him, I assume he's working at McDonald's, so not making a bunch of money. So I explain to him about the Subaru and like how you can get like basically WRX, but for less money, blah, blah, blah. And then I pull forward, and then I have the realization of this person may not know what the hell I'm talking about, because I think they assume my ST was a lesser version of an STI. Like,
yeah.
Because as I was pulling away, I saw the eyes glazed over. Like when you talk chassis code just now, like I felt that happening to me too. I'm like, oh, they didn't have any idea what I was talking about, so I was just talking and like nothing was sinking in. Like, understood. So, but I don't know. Maybe imparted some wisdom to the young man. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah. So, what is your least favorite car then?
Dodge Neon.
Oh, that was an easy one. They didn't even take a second with that one.
There were just some really awful cars in the 80s. People talk a lot about the malaise era.
Yeah.
When I was, I guess, like 17 or 18, my stepdad had a Chevrolet Citation or something like that. Just miserable. Everything about it was miserable. The seats were awful, or like Reliant, the K cars. just awful, awful cars from when I was a kid. I despise those. Yeah, those are my least favorite.
Is there a particular K car you hate over all the rest of the K cars?
I guess it would have to be the Reliant K. My dad had one as a company car, and it was even like taupe. Yuck. Horrifying. I mean, the only thing that it did was it would move human beings. Technically, it would move human beings from one spot to another, but it would be utterly uninspired during the trip, and they would arrive actually a little bit dumber than they were when they left.
Well, just like fumes coming out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your favorite automotive like modification trend? So we're talking like donk, brodozer, stance, rallied, like race prepped, like any of the modification trends you kind of see out there in this day and age. Or I guess any day and age. We don't need to qualify it with time, because anything that happened in the past can happen now, and if you know anything in the future, that's just magic. So,
as far as just aesthetics, the rally aesthetic is pretty cool looking. I mean, because they'll often do like they'll do white wheels, and like it's a really cool looking. It's a cool looking car, but I definitely do like cars that I feel like, they've been raced. They try to keep it clean, but you can't really keep a race car clean. Like it's got some scratches on it, it's got some wear on it. That's my favorite aesthetic is a racing car that you can tell has actually been raced. Like they pick up little pieces of little rubber marbles, get flung onto the car, and they leave a little black streak.
Yeah.
And you can never get that off, and that's just a really cool looking aesthetic. And rally cars are really cool looking, but I've never done a rally, and I don't plan to ever rally. I just like the look of the cars. I guess it's because of the white wheels. But I'm gonna probably say the Japanese word wrong, but Bosozuki. Do you know about that?
It's like the one where it's like super exaggerated, because I know there's a couple of trains, where like they have like the giant exhaust pipes and all that.
I love those exhaust pipes. I mean, it is so ridiculous. It's so cool, and I learned about it from a fellow Lemons car. There was a Lemons car that had exhaust pipes that were like Z-shaped, and then like they had these really crazy like motorcycle style tips on them, and that is just so dumb. I love it. I mean. And I some of the drift stuff I think is pretty cool. Like when they put the oil cooler,
I like that too.
Like drift stitching a car, like you torn the bumper and you do a drift stitch on it with zip ties, and then you just zip tie the oil cooler to the front of the car because you don't care. Yeah. That's a pretty cool aesthetic too.
Megan?
I don't have anything to add to that. I like all those things too.
Yeah, I just answered the question like 6 times though, right. So sorry, honey.
It always makes me laugh when I see cars with the suspension that goes up and down. I do kind of like that.
Oh, you mean like an air ride? Like you can kneel the car kind of thing?
No, when we go to Caffeine and Octane and the cars go by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you mean like a West Coast?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Like the cars that go like hop in the air? What the heck is that called?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like 16 switches, like a 65 Impala that's got hop.
There's like a term for that. There's like low rider, like popping, or like what is that? I try to remember what the hell that's called. Oh, that's gonna drive me nuts. There's a specific phrase for that, and now that's gonna drive me absolute bonkers. So while that drives me bonkers, and I try and come up with something else. The next question is, what's your least favorite modification trend?
Least favorite modification.
Yeah, so what we try to say here is we try to say we're donk friendly, because if you're into your car and you modify it, you're enjoying vehicles, so we appreciate that as automotive enthusiasts. But at the end of the day, there's just some modifications where your personal taste you look at and go, yeah, I would never do that to my car.
Spinners.
Stancing.
Stancing is a popular no-go zone.
I think that's probably because of the sample, the sample, not the sample size, but the samples of people that you're inviting on the cast are probably, more racing inspired. And when you look at a stanced car as somebody who races cars, you're just like, that is not going to perform very well, But that's not the point. I mean, so they're welcome to do what. But when I look at a stanced car, I'm like, man, you are ruining those tires. You're going to get 10,000 miles out of those, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, when it's like driving like all the way up, like so much camber, it's driving all the way up on the edge of the tire. It's like, don't understand that.
Yeah. And like a 205 series tire stretched over an 8-inch, wheel.
Yeah.
So that it's all weird looking, and I don't know. Hey, it's your car. Do what you want. It's awesome.
That's kind of how I look at it. Is like you're like, it's very much. Maybe this is not the best analogy, but it's kind of like the, love is love. Like I'm not going to harsh on you loving, who you want to love, but that's just not for me. Like that's not the way I roll. Like so, like you do what you want to do.
Would be the modification you were least likely to do to one of your own cars.
Exactly. Like,
and that stancing would be the least likely, I think.
Mm-hmm. So what car do you dread being stuck behind at a red light?
Huh.
Yeah. You roll up to a red light. There's there's 2 lanes in front of you, and one of those lanes has this car in it, and the other one has basically anything else. You're always going to go to that anything else lane, or you roll up
don't want to have to look at. There are a couple of cars that I think are so visually repulsive that I don't want my eyeballs to have to look at them. PT Cruiser, the Chevrolet HHR, the Prowler, the Plymouth Prowler, horrifying, the ugly car.
Mm-hmm.
Garbage truck for me.
Yeah. With the garbage truck though, like an actual turd might fly out and land on you.
Mm-hmm. That's a new one, and that's remarkably practical, especially given the exoset that you will be building. Like,
yeah.
You don't want to be turned into Biff Tannen, I suppose. Is that the guy from? Yeah.
Not really.
Right.
Yeah, I made a movie reference. That's very rare on this show.
Yeah. We miss you, Bill Paxton. You're one of the greats.
Was he Biff? See, this is again where I'm showing my lack of knowledge on things. He wasn't Biff. Who was Biff? Was that Bill Paxton?
He was Chet, wasn't he? Or no?
See, this is why movie references never come up on the show, because it's like I don't know things. So, let me see here. Lost my train of thought here. Or not my train of thought. Ironically, my place in my little notes here. What automotive sound or noise do you love? Like, a example would be like a lot of people say engine noise, or like, they enjoy the sound of like working on a vehicle. They like, impact wrench, or sometimes it's a very specific, type of racing they enjoy hearing, like, or like a supercharger, like winding, stuff like that. Or like even screeching of tires. Like,
it is hard to argue with the sound of a fully tuned, completely uncorked race car at Road Atlanta. It's just our local tracks that were there probably more often than any other track, but a proper racing car, like modern sequential shift, like paddle shift, listening to the gear change, which is, it's probably like 100 milliseconds gear change, but just that sort of like popping noise when they change the gears.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
It is unbelievable. And I also really like the sound of those motors on overrun, when they're cracking and popping, and the Exoset does that actually. It'll burble a little bit on overrun, but all that is kind of being adulterated now because all these new cars, they're piping the sound of the motor into the cabin, and it doesn't even doesn't even correspond to the actual motor in the car.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like a big old race motor shifting up through the gears, cracking and popping, and backfiring on overrun. I mean, it's hard to beat that.
Great. It's mine too.
Yeah. So, what is your least favorite automotive noise? A lot of people here say stuff like, brake squeal, or the sound of a head gasket popping, or a line breaking. Sometimes it's like the fart cans on a Honda, particular type of exhaust. The whistles that go woo woo, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Bub rub.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, it was Thomas F. Wilson who played Biff Tannen.
Oh, okay. I don't know who that is either. So
any kind of whine, usually a whine is bad.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, belts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, or like an idler gear's getting ready to go. You can hear the bearing getting ready to get. They're getting all crunchy on you. Those are bad noises. When like your water pump pulley is getting crappy and it's making like a sort of a chittering sound, or ticking, lifter ticking, rod knock is a bad noise. I mean, there are lots of bad noises.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Absolutely dislike the sound of the rear windows being down and the front windows being up.
Yeah. When you're going at moderate speed. Right.
Again, that's a new one, and that one is actually probably like one of the worst, like the most painful noise to actually have, because that hurts the living crap out of my ears. So
it really is painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this question, takes a little bit of setup here. So I'm going to give you a choice. And it's two different versions of this question for both of you. So I'm going to give you two vehicles. You're not allowed to modify them, and you have to drive them as your daily driver for the rest of your time, and you're not allowed to modify them beyond how they've already been modified. So James, for you can take on this while I explain the cars to Megan after this. So James, for you have to choose between a Porsche 993 911 RS America, but it's been stanced to within an inch of its life. Or you can have a taupe Reliant K car, but it's somehow both Buzaki and rally raced prepped. So it's got giant exhaust pipes on it, but it's also been set up on big knobby tires, and the thing's ready to race. Megan, for you have to choose between a WRX STI, but it's rolling on the most ridiculous spinners one can imagine. So picture like teddy bear spinners, or a lowrider with hydraulics Dodge Neon. And just for shits and giggles, we're going to strap a boombox into the back seat, and that's your head unit.
The end of my days, huh?
Mm-hmm. That is your car from now until the end of your days. That's what you get. You're not allowed to. It's your new daily driver. That's what you get. So, James, did we give you enough time to think about your decision here?
Yeah, man, give me the K car. Give me the Bo Suzuki rally prepped K car, because, I mean, hate on, people. I got my style. And if it's truly rally prepped, then it'll have some grunt on it, and it'll be fun off road, and the pipes will be totally crazy, and people will see me going down the road, and they'll be like, "There goes an idiot." I'm into that more than I'm into just destroying the aesthetic of an RS America with the stance.
Mm. I bet you when we started this podcast, you didn't think at the end of it you'd be like, you know what? Give me the Reliant K car, even though it's Topaz or Taupe.
No.
Megan, for yourself. I feel like yours is a little bit more difficult because you got two basically very good cars. One has some awesome hydraulics on it, and the other one has some ridiculous spinners. So,
yeah, I might. I might go with the neon actually,
Hmm.
as long as depending on the color.
Well, let me see here. I'm going to guess your least favorite color is pastel green, so we're going to put that on there.
Oh, come on.
If it's easy, then it's not fun. That's how this works. That's how entertainment works. Come on, now it's like getting into a car with your head first. Right? I mean, it's got.
I don't think I can live with the shame of sinners.
I get that. And, at the end of the day, unless you're driving around with a Rolls Royce, there's no reason why when you're moving, the hubcap should be still, and when you're still, they should be moving. So,
Yeah.
now,
By the way, I've been saying it wrong. It's Bosa Zoku.
Bosa Zoku, hi, arigato. That's all the Japanese I know. Bosa Zoku. Bosa Zoku? Yeah, that sounds about right. And let me try this again. Exoset. See, I'm learning pronunciation today. You see?
Yeah, you're getting there.
We're eventually I'll learn English good or other words good. I don't know what exoset is. Is that technically English? Who knows? It's car guy talk. And then soon I'll be talking chassis codes and engine codes, and it'll all be great. Oh my God. I have a Audi engine, and I'm having to learn engine code from the Audi engine, and it's driving me nuts. So, crazy. So we're over time. It's super late. I don't mean to keep you all up too late here. So we're going to end this with the most important question I think that's ever asked on any automotive podcast, perhaps any podcast in the history of time. And I sent this into research questions out to you, so I hope you've had plenty of time to think about this. No pressure, but a very, very important question. What's the hardest food to eat while driving? Yeah.
Oh, cereal.
See, cereal's a good go-to. People go with the cereal, but if the Always Sunny in Philadelphia has taught us anything, it is possible. It is messy. I will give you that, but I think it's doable. Again, this turns.
It is not possible to arrive at work with clean scrubs while eating cereal.
Yeah. I'm going sushi.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sushi's too. Again, this is what this typically turns into: is stupid shit Ike's done in cars. So I have done both of those things, and I will put the. Well, I need to come up with like a scale on this one. It's like my Ike stupometer. Sushi is super easy because you just pick it up and you just, even with the chopsticks. I've driven a manual car. I've driven actually this was a Volvo C30. So I drove in my Volvo C30 with the sushi in the center console, and you can like upshift with the chopsticks in your hand, grab a sushi, shove it into your mouth, and keep driving with one hand on the wheel. I mean, come on now. Come on.
Was it a Polaris though?
Huh?
Was it a Polaris?
Well,
or Polestar? Yeah, that's what they call it.
It had it was the R design, so it had the handling package that the Polestar had, but it didn't have the engine management upgrade. So it had it had 250 horsepower, and you could feel every bump on the road. So yeah. See,
I like those Polestars.
Oh, they are awesome. Quit trying to get on my good side here, Jim. This is not going to get you out of your bad answer. So the cereal is more messy. I'll give you that. But I have driven. You need the knee, and I will say it is. It's probably hard to arrive at work without making a mess with the cereal. That is true, especially if you have to go to a traffic light. And I think it depends a lot on the cereal. What cereal in particular are we talking about? What's the hardest cereal to drive with?
Oh, I don't know. I pretty much only eat one kind. Oatmeal squares.
Do you just hate fun, like oatmeal squares? Like, I was expecting like cereals or something or actually, you know what's the worst cereal? And I don't care if they have an issue with this. Kix is the worst cereal on the planet. Like, I don't know what Kix is made out of.
I had Kix.
Yeah, it's like hatred in a ball. Like, I don't know, kid tested, mother approved. Like, no, those things are awful, and you should feel bad for trying to foist that stuff onto children. Bad.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I have some weird issues with Kix. Oatmeal squares. Yeah, I'll give it to you because if it's like the shredded kind of oatmeal and it kind of falls apart and makes a mess, I'll give you a pass on that one. I'm going to need a better answer, though, Jim. I'm going to need something else besides sushi. Unless you could come up with a very particular type of sushi that would be hard to eat while driving.
I don't know. I mean, I think it would be probably pretty hard to eat a steak.
So
you have two hands to cut it, unless you're some kind of savage and you're just gonna grab the steak in your hands and gnaw off a hunk of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if you're hungry, carry on. But I mean, like, to eat a steak like a grown normal human being, where you need a knife and a fork.
Mm-hmm.
That would be challenging.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you couldn't even have a glass of wine either. I mean, that's illegal. I'm pretty sure.
That's true. That's we call that the Patrick Sandell here, because that was his answer, and I let him slide with it because he's got like dreamy eyes and you get lost in them. Oh, don't. So Jim, as an aside here, since we're friends, don't let Megan around Patrick Sandell. She will get lost in his eyes and like be his for forever. Like, I'm sitting there on the sofa with him. I'm like, I'm lost in your like beautiful blue eyes, Patrick. I don't know what I'm doing with interviewing you. It's like, I gotta go. Like, so.
I'll be in my bunk.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I get the Firefly reference. See, that I get. He's a dreamy man. Love my wife very much, but if Patrick was like, let's run away together, I'd be like, there'd be a beat.
What do we drive? Tell me what car we're in, and I'll tell you yes or no.
You know, he was slightly dreamier when he was racing for Ford Motor Company, but now that he's in that Subaru, and I don't think I'd do it now. Not a big Subaru, fangirl. So, I mean, yeah, I said what I meant. So, folks, it's late. It's Sunday. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. I've kept you up very late, and I'm sure you got important jobs to go to in the morning. So tell us where we can find you on the internet. It's a wonderful series of tubes, your social media, and where we can find your YouTube and your podcast.
Well, our website is crossthreaded.us. And Jim does a really good job of making sure that all of our social media stuff is kept up to date on there. We do Twitter, and we're Xthreaded on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah.
I think we're Xthreaded on Instagram too.
Mm.
Yeah, one of them we're Xthreaded Show. Just looking now. On Twitter we're Xthreaded Show. And I think on Insta we are just Xthreaded, but it's all on our website, crossthreaded.us. Really easy to find, the YouTube, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's right there.
Mm-hmm. And however you're listening to this podcast, you can, of course, go over and search for Crossthreaded and listen to Jim and Megan talk about racing tractors or interviewing great guests like the Bad Motorsports guys, which... I think we reached out to them at around the same time, and I think they got a bit confused on that. And then Jay Lamb was another good one. So, we've had some wonderful guests on there, and you really should go check it out because there's been some great interviews. And I'm a little jealous you got to interview the Bad Obsession Motorsports guys. I'm a big fan of their work, as you all are. And, I think that's a perfect entry point there. Is go listen to the Bad Obsession Motorsports guys, and then Project Binky, for those of you who know that from the YouTube series. And then there's a episode, I think it's something about like we make racing cheaper. I think that's another good point of entry. Do you have like another favorite for our episode you think people should go listen to?
Oh, well, it was great to get to interview Ryan Dial, IMSA driver. Sarah Montgomery was really great. She is driving in Pirelli World Challenge now, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it's great to get to talk to proper racing drivers, but we've been lucky to talk to, engineers. Kevin Patrick, the guy that started Exomotive, Warren Van Nuss, one of his lead engineers for a long time, Keith Tanner from Flying Miata, although I don't think his interview's gone live yet. But
just either way,
we're equally interested in talking to people on the engineering side, people with, that sort of background, but also racing drivers, and it's you can't go wrong. We're really like talking to those folks and learning something.
Mm-hmm. And with a wonderful Southern hospitality twist and this wonderful husband and wife chemistry you both got going on. So, I want to thank you two so much for joining me this evening. I'm going to ask you just to hang on. I'll say goodbye to you off air. And everyone listening, we'll be right back with you. Again, Jim, Megan, thank you so much for joining me this evening. And
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure.
all right, and we are going to go on break. All right, everyone, thanks so much for listening. Make sure to go check out Crossthreaded. Make sure if you like what you hear, you check out our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. It's all at Untitled Car Show. Make sure to go get a T-shirt from Track Monkey Apparel. It really supports the show. And everyone, thanks so much for listening. Have a good night. Have a good evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thanks again for listening. Please be safe out there.